Welcome to ET Auto. I have with me the Executive Director of Maruti Suzuki India, Mr. Rahul Bharti. We are at the 64th Annual Session of the Auto Component Manufacturers Association. Uh, Welcome, Mr. Bharti. We are very pleased to have you for ET Auto. My first question would be related to the theme of today's convention, which is Vikasit Bharat, which is something that the Prime Minister has also been talking about. And we are aiming to reach that goal somewhere in 2047. So, I would like to understand from you what is it that Maruti Suzuki is doing to help us achieve that goal in the automotive space?
As you rightly said, I think the automotive sector has a very powerful opportunity, and the automotive sector is very strategic to Viksit Bharat because the Prime Minister has rightly identified the manufacturing sector as the single largest tool to catapult India from a developing country to a developed country. Within manufacturing, auto is the largest. And as the market leader for cars, we also have a responsibility. I'll divide our journey towards that into two parts. One is deep localization, which is minimize imports and try to make everything in house. And the other part is increase exports. So, on the manufacturing side, in deep localization, we have seen in the past, whether it's a semiconductor crisis or the container crisis or vaccines, a country as large as India needs self-reliance, total self-reliance. Other than some natural minerals, I think everything, including electronics and including semiconductors, should be made in India. So that is deep localization. So we are pushing our suppliers and encouraging them and facilitating them to localize as much as possible down to the last level.
Give us an idea of what you are doing. I mean, are you getting newer suppliers into the supply chain through this? Are you encouraging investments by them? And how are you doing this? How are you encouraging suppliers to actually make more in India?
Great. So, in all our communication and all our conferences with the suppliers and forums like this, the Component Manufacturers Annual Convention, we are requesting them to localize as much as possible, including having incentives for localization. I'll give you an example. Even the detonator, which sparks off the airbag, when the airbag opens, even those components which are considered very, very niche and highly technical and need a lot of quality standards, peso, etc., even those we are localizing. So that is on deep localization on one side.
So, when you spoke of incentives, who gives the incentives?
So, uh, see, our philosophy is that localization should almost get us a cost reduction. So, whatever the cost reduction incurs, we share between the supplier and the OEM so that he has a financial incentive to localize. And it has worked well for us in the past, and we hope that more and more localization is achieved on this.
Can you give an example of a substantial part or a substantial technology that you are now trying to localize and the benefits, the quantum of benefits that will be shared?
Uh, the quantum of benefits obviously varies across from component to component, but very niche components, as I mentioned, for example, mostly electronic controls, mechatronics, the detonator which sets off the airbag, even components like this, or high tech materials, all those manufacturing we are aggressively aiming for localization along with our suppliers, partners. The second side is exports. I think exports is a mega opportunity for India, and Maruti Suzuki will be very happy to capitalize on this opportunity. Th-
So recently there has been some upset in the export pecking order from India. Tell us about that.
See, temporary blips like this do happen, but you'll be very happy to know that the auto sector, both automobiles and auto components, were hugely resilient to this change. While the overall merchandise exports of India had some growth pangs, but the auto and the auto component industry was growing, and that is why we are very hot on this. The reason is very strategic. The kind of growth aspirations we have for Viksit Bharat, they alone cannot be met by domestic demand if we do the numbers. So we have to cover up and we have to grow faster using exports. And exports, we are still having a small fraction of the global trade, a small pie. There is no reason why India cannot take a larger pie of the global markets. And if the numbers are to be seen, we have grown multifold in the past few years. Uh, we have high growth plans ahead. We're exporting to about 100 countries of the world. And we have done this with IC engines, but now we will be doing it with the newer technologies like the EVs also.
This brings me to your plans, Maruti's plans on alternate, as we call them, alternate fuels, which is anything apart from ICE vehicles. So, what are your plans? How many vehicles will we see in the next 4 5 years? And what is the focus of Maruti as far as alternate fuel vehicles are concerned?
Right. I would uh, give it a much larger name, which is decarbonization. And towards decarbonization, we will be using all technologies, starting from EVs to hydrogen to strong hybrids to biofuels to natural gas. So we will be leveraging all technologies in an effort to reduce carbon emissions and to reduce oil consumption. And as you rightly said, to minimize the pure petrol and diesel vehicles, because there the oil consumption and the CO2 emission would be maximum. So we will be using all such technologies. Our EV will be uh, uh, launched, introduced in the Bharat Mobility Show, and we will be it's a high specification EV because we want to give the customer the confidence that they can just forget about range anxiety. Of course, later we will go as the consumer feedback comes, and we will be exporting these cars also to countries like those in Europe or Japan. Already we are exporting our francs to Japan, and then we have hydrogen, we have hybrids, we have biofuels. Biofuels are a huge opportunity for India because uh, you know, is very rich in resources like animal waste, agri waste, bio waste, human being waste. All this can be converted to energy in a very clean manner.
Give us an idea of what your portfolio is right now in terms of alternate fuels and where will it be, the entire portfolio, let's say, by the turn of the decade.
Right. So today, India has about 2% EVs, about 2% strong hybrids, about 16% natural gas vehicles, and about 80% petrol and diesel. So, what we will be doing is by 2030, at least 15 to 20% of Maruti's portfolio should come from EVs, about 25% from hybrids, and the balance from IC engines. But those IC engines won't be pure IC engines. They would have some component of natural gas. uh, Chances are that natural gas would come from compressed biogas, for which the government is making huge efforts and huge facilitation. We will have flex fuel, we'll have ethanol, higher blends of ethanol. So we will be using all technologies for for carbon reduction.
So your estimate is that hybrids will have a larger share of the portfolio by 2030 than pure electric or battery electric vehicles.
See, honestly, I don't see any sense in that comparison. Our objective should be to maximize both these technologies and any other technology, let's say hydrogen, that reduces oil consumption and uh, reduces carbon emission. So our idea has to be towards that objective. It does not matter through which technology. We have to maximize the sum of both. We need not be overly concerned about one versus the other. We need both because both are excellent technologies.
Right now, as some of the panelists and one of the ministers also said today, there is a lot of concern, I may call it, or you can use another word, of the cost differential between a vehicle driven by alternate fuels and an ICE vehicle, whether it's a hybrid or whether it's an electric vehicle. So, do you see the cost differential substantially coming down?
See, cost differential will come down as more and more manufacturers get into the technology, improvise the technology, and use economies of scale. India has to find its own solutions, and which are unique to the Indian context, and ingenious efforts both by the component industry and the automobile industry will help bridge this cost gap. Any facilitation, any support from the government will also be welcome.
Is there any specific demand that the industry has or you have as far as support from the government is concerned on bridging this cost differential?
In most cases, the interventions that we need are not financial in nature. They are about facilitation. For example, in biofuels, the problem is not of cost viability so much as it is about getting the operations right. Like, for example, the feedstock issues, the disposal of fermented organic manure. Those are the interventions that we need to do. In ethanol, for example, the viability exists. What we need is sufficient supply of ethanol, and industry will be forthcoming in developing models of that. So, in many cases, the problem is not financial in nature.
Lastly, there's been some concern from the industry on the industry retail versus dispatch numbers, but also over the overall industry growth right now. Any comments?
I think we should all be very happy and proud that India has reached the third largest status in the world, the third largest car manufacturer of the world. And I mean, at such a high level, it's very obvious and very natural that the market may take a breather for a few months. We are not concerned about it at all. We know that India has a very long uh, growth story ahead. If we were at all concerned about this kind of growth issues, we would have held back on our investments. But the fact of the matter is, we have pressed the accelerator down to the floor on our new investments. Why would we be doing that if we were concerned about growth? I think growth is a given. We have to gear up to supply, and temporary blips like this don't matter at all.
What is the investment figure, sir, for the next 4 5 years?
I think starting last year, we had put out on our uh, a message to our investors that there may be a visibility of about 1.25 lakh crore from 2023 to the end of the decade 2031 of investment in capacities, in new models, in clean technologies, and in R&D.
And that figure stands, sir.
Yeah, that's nice.
Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you.